Chapter 380. Zhu Xian Heir, female, 21 years old, second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, from the Half-Moon sect. 2 years ago, she ranked 76th in the Prodigy tournament. However, a year later, she broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, and this year, she even advanced to the second layer of the spiritual pedestal tier. It's conceivable that at the end of next year's Prodigy gathering, her strength will improve further, possibly reaching the third layer or even the fourth layer. Estimated battle prowess is 12 stars, currently ranked 13th in the North region. Ling Han stopped and nodded. Zhu Xian'er lived up to her reputation as a genius. The speed at which her cultivation advanced was a little shocking. In other words, she broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier at the age of 20, and after entering the spiritual pedestal tier, she could still advance 2 steps in a year, which was quite shocking. Continuing to flip, Zwayuda ranked 19th, and the triplets of the Limitless sect ranked 67th, 68th, and 69th, but the evaluation said that because the three were one, if they joined forces, their battle prowess could reach 33rd. 2 of the 7 sons of Ao family also made the list, namely Ao Xing Lai, ranked 78th, and Ao Yuan Wei, ranked 89th. According to this ranking, he should only be ranked around 40th. However, there were still 4 months until the end of the year, and with Ling Han's speed of improvement, he could at least reach the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier when the Prodigy gathering started, and his ranking would naturally be far above 40. Moreover, this was the most normal speed. If he could obtain additional worldly treasures, then it might not be certain. The 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier and the spiritual pedestal tier weren't impossible. Forget it, do I still have to join in the fun for this kind of child's play? There's no benefit. Ling Han shook his head. With his heaven tier status in his previous life, competing with these little guys was already very shameful. Moreover, the time was too short, and he might not be able to get first place. That would truly be shameful. Many great beauties from the extreme young city came today. Gong Letian said. That's Jiang Luxian, the eldest miss of the Jiang family, and over there, Di Ting Lan, the 3rd miss of the Di family. The 7th miss of the Gongsun family is also here, Gongsun Lan Hui, as beautiful as an orchid, with a heart like an orchid. Ling Han followed his finger. Sure enough, whether it was Di Ting Lan, Jiang Yuxian, or Gongsun Lan Hui, they were all extremely outstanding beauties. Even compared to Lu Yutong and Li Si Chan, they were not inferior. Their stunning beauty, their outstanding talent in martial art, and their noble birth made them dazzling stars. Everyone chased after them. It could be seen that there were many young men circling around the 3 women, trying to attract their attention. It's a pity that their standards are too high. Otherwise, this young master could introduce you to them. Gong Letian nudged Ling Han's waist. Ling Han gave a ha and said, "Thank you very much." That's true. Your family's Lu Yutong is also a great beauty, not inferior to any of them, Gong Letian said. Ling Han only smiled, thinking that Gong Letian had never seen a true beauty before. In his last life, the heavenly phoenix divine maiden had been called the #1 beauty in the world, and was far superior to Lu Yutong and Jiang Luxian. Unfortunately, she was a bit too barbaric, or else he really could marry her. Ling Han hurriedly shivered. He actually thought of marrying a barbaric woman like the heavenly phoenix divine maiden. What was wrong with his brain? Zhong Ziwei is here, someone suddenly called out, immediately making most of the people stand up. Ling Han immediately ran through his mind. This was a person on the North region's Prodigy roll, ranked 54th, at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, but his battle prowess reached 18 stars and could surpass 9 stars to battle. This was very shocking. On the entire Prodigy roll, only one person could surpass 10 stars to battle, Zhu Xian'er. The other prodigies could only surpass 9 stars. However, surpassing 9 stars in the spiritual pedestal tier and surpassing 9 stars in the spiritual ocean tier were completely different concepts. The higher the tier, the harder it was to surpass one's tier to battle. For example, this Zhong Ziwei could surpass 9 stars now, but after he broke through to the spiritual pedestal tier, he might fall to 8 stars, or even 7 stars. Sword Emperor and Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden could surpass 10 stars to battle in the Heaven tier. They were truly geniuses among geniuses, exceptional freaks. From this point, Zhu Xian'er was indeed astonishingly talented. No wonder she was in the middle state sections. Zhong Ziwei. Gong Letian immediately revealed an excited expression. Ranked 54th on the prodigy roll, the hardest thing is that he doesn't come from a large sect, but from a small clan, yet he squeezed into the prodigy roll with his own efforts. He's my idol. Not long later, everyone clustered around a slender young man. Even Di Tinglan and Jiang Luxian surrounded him, all of their pretty faces blossoming with beautiful smiles, unstintingly displaying their stunning beauty. Zhong Ziwei, ranked 54th on the North Region's prodigy roll, could be said to be one of the North Region's most dazzling stars. As long as he didn't fall, he would definitely become a great figure in the North Region in the future. Such a person would definitely be noticed by everyone, fighting to be on good terms with him. I'm so envious. Gong Letian said, his eyes burning. He also wanted to become a person that was the center of attention. Although he was a spoiled brat and who knew how many people flattered him, that was because of the clan behind him, not him. As a young man full of pride, he longed to use his own strength to obtain respect. Lu Qiyuan also went up and raised his wine cup to toast Zhong Ziwei. Due to Lu Qiyuan's background, Zhong Ziwei was very polite, and the two chatted happily. However, the distance was too far, and Ling Han couldn't hear what they were talking about. As the banquet continued, more and more people from the prodigy roll arrived. As the prodigy battle that was held once every 3 years was going to start in about 4 months, and the location was Extreme Yang City, many people had already arrived. Even quite a few experts from the prodigy roll had arrived. However, none of them were ranked higher than Zhong Ziwei, so there was not as much commotion as before. Coming so early was to avoid any delays on the road and miss the grand event that happened once every 3 years. Secondly, with so many young experts gathered together, they could exchange spiritual medicines, treasures, and the like. Who knows, they might be of great use. This was the purpose of today's banquet. After the experts on the leaderboard finished talking about their recent adventures, the treasure exchange segment began. Everyone stood up and introduced their own treasures to everyone, as well as the types of treasures they wanted to exchange. This was a bit like an auction, with all kinds of things like cultivation techniques, martial arts techniques, medicinal pills, and some things of unknown origin. They were all antiques that could be found in all kinds of ruins, and some things were even older than Ling Han's previous life. Some treasures were quite precious. Zhong Ziwei even took out a 600-year-old gold silk 1000-spark fruit. This was a 4th-tier spirit fruit that could greatly increase the cultivation of the spiritual ocean tier. Because Zhong Ziwei already reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he only needed to solidify his tier and didn't need to increase his cultivation, so he didn't need this spirit fruit. However, too many people didn't reach the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so it triggered a fierce competition. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 381. Ling Han was also very interested. He was now at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, still far from the peak of the spiritual ocean tier, so the gold silk 1000-spark fruit was especially suitable for him, enough to improve him by 1 or 2 small tiers. Then, at the end of the year, he could charge to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, or even the spiritual pedestal tier. After all, once his spiritual power cultivation was there, the barrier of a large tier didn't exist. Although Ling Han wasn't interested in competing with the younger generation for rankings, he was long past the competitive age, unless there was a treasure that moved him as a reward. However, as a person with high self-esteem, he still hoped to become the strongest. Even if there was a gap of several years between him and the top few on the prodigy roll, who asked him to have such a deep foundation. Since they could be compared together, then he didn't want to lose. Everyone took out what they thought was precious to exchange, but Zhong Ziwei shook his head and refused. It didn't match his expectations. Ling Han stood up and said with a smile, "Brother Zhong, I have a bottle of medicinal pills, I don't know if you're interested." Brother Zhong. Everyone turned to look at Ling Han, all revealing a mocking expression. What a joke! A nameless junior at the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier actually dared to call an expert on the prodigy role brother. The ignorant were truly fearless. A prodigy like Zhong Ziwei didn't have the ability to charge to the spiritual pedestal tier. Wrong, he didn't break through not because he couldn't, but because he wanted to strengthen the spiritual ocean tier to an extremely sturdy level, so that he could charge to a higher tier in the future. Which young prodigy of this generation wasn't ambitious? Martial art was in a flourishing age, with elites emerging from all walks of life, constantly breaking the minimum age to break through to a certain tier, and the number of top elites was increasing. Which young man didn't want to squeeze into the peak of martial art and lead the way? A few bottles of medicinal pills. Pa, would Zhong Ziwei lack medicinal pills? What kind of medicinal pills could a 4th layer spiritual ocean tier cultivator take out? It was said that some forces in the middle state extended an olive branch to him. Although it wasn't a super force like the Heaven's Sword sect, it was definitely shocking. Hey, don't talk nonsense. Gong Letian hurriedly pulled on the corner of Ling Han's clothes, feeling that everyone's disdainful gazes also implicated him, truly an undeserved calamity. Ling Han just smiled at him and did not explain anything. Unlike the others, Zhong Ziwei didn't put a mocking expression on his face. Instead, he said indifferently, "Little brother, what pill do you want to exchange with me?" Ling Han took out a bottle of Restore Spirit pill and threw it over. After Zhong Ziwei caught it, he opened the cork. When the smell of medicine wafted out, the careless expression on his face suddenly disappeared, and he exclaimed, "Restore Spirit pill." What? Spirit restoring pill? Everyone exclaimed in surprise, and their eyes burned with passion. For ordinary people, not only was the Restore Origin pill not a spiritual medicine, but it was also a hindrance because it could not increase one's cultivation. On the contrary, it would lower one's cultivation. Just like building a foundation, the effect of the Restore Spirit pill was to hammer the foundation to make it incomparably solid. However, there was no doubt that this would make the originally built foundation shorter, and it would take more effort to restore it to its original state. For ordinary people, they didn't need to strengthen their foundations. All they needed was the rapid improvement of their realms. However, for geniuses, they strived for perfection, striving to cultivate every tier to the point of perfection. They could be invincible in the same tier, and in the future, they could also charge to the supreme tier. Otherwise, when they climbed to a certain height, the foundation would be unstable, and the tall building would instantly collapse. There were so many people at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier in the North region, but why were there only a few dozen people who squeezed into the prodigy list? It was because they solidified their tier shockingly, and their battle prowess far surpassed their tier. A person at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier didn't need to take the trouble to solidify their foundation, so they might only be able to battle surpassing 2 stars. However, when they reached the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, geniuses would start to solidify their foundation and prepare for the future. Thus, their tier wouldn't change, but their battle prowess would skyrocket, and it wouldn't be strange to be able to battle surpassing 3 or even 4 stars. Thus, there were so many people at the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier on the prodigy roll, but their battle prowess was extremely lacking. Zhong Ziwei had already reached the peak of the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier half a year ago. In this half a year, he had been suppressing his cultivation and solidifying his foundation, striving to break through to the spiritual pedestal tier in a perfect manner and possess battle prowess surpassing 2 or even 3 stars in one go. If he had Restore Origin pill and 4 months' time, it would be enough for him to solidify his tier perfectly. Then, with his talent, breaking through to the spiritual pedestal tier wouldn't be the slightest problem. He had the ability to break through long ago, but had been suppressing it. At that time, he would be able to soar into the sky, squeezing into the top 30 or 20 was even possible. He hurriedly looked carefully, and when he discovered that there were actually 20 Restore Origin pills in the bottle, he was instantly overjoyed. Even the hand that held the bottle trembled slightly. It wasn't that he hadn't seen and eaten Restore Origin pills before, but he immediately discovered that not only was it genuine, but the quality was also very high, but to what extent, he wasn't an alchemist, so he couldn't be sure. "I'll trade." Zhong Ziwei made a prompt decision. For a genius like him, decisiveness was definitely an inherent trait. An indecisive person definitely wouldn't reach this step. Ling Han raised his eyebrows and smiled. He knew that for a young genius like Zhong Ziwei, medicinal pills like Restore Origin pills were most precious. Unfortunately, yellow dragon fruits were hard to come by, and the stock in his hands was almost used up. Fortunately, after obtaining this gold silk thousand spark fruit, he didn't have any great pursuits in the spiritual ocean tier. When he reached the spiritual pedestal tier, the Restore Origin pill couldn't be exchanged for the worldly treasures he needed, so it had almost no effect. Zhong Ziwei also threw the gold silk thousand spark fruit over, which was stored into the Black Tower by Ling Han. The two were all smiles, acting as if nothing had happened, showing their extremely strong control. If it were an ordinary person, they'd definitely be in a hurry to leave after obtaining the treasure. "Fairy Zhu is here. Fairy Zhu is here." At first, there was only a small commotion, but it immediately caused a commotion in the audience. Even Gong Letian stood up at once and said, "Where is Fairy Zhu? Where is Fairy Zhu? Fairy Zhu, Zhu Xian'er." Ling Han was slightly surprised. Was this woman's charm really that great? He noticed that even Zhong Ziwei completely lost control, his face filled with a fanatical expression. There wasn't a trace of the appearance of a genius expert, and he wasn't the slightest bit different from others. Being able to make Zhong Ziwei, who had extremely strong self-control, fall so deeply, Zhu Xian'er's charm was evident. At this time, even Ling Han was a bit curious. What kind of beauty was this Zhu Xian'er to be able to bewitch all the people of the North region, and even the geniuses of the Middle States Heaven's Sword sect were moved. The audience was in an uproar, and everyone rushed out to welcome this Fairy Zhu. 10 minutes later, a white-clothed woman walked out from the crowd. Her face was covered with a white veil, and her appearance couldn't be seen at all, but her graceful beauty made people feel relaxed and happy. With just a corner, Ling Han could be sure that Zhu Xian'er's beauty was far above that of Lu Yutong and the other girls, and even qualified to compete with Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden. However, to move Ling Han's heart, this was something impossible. It couldn't be helped. Who asked him to see Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden every few days in his last life, and she did things that made him extremely depressed, making him unable to like her even if he wanted to. With such a precaution, so what if Zhu Xian'er was the second Heavenly Phoenix Divine Maiden? Zhu Xian'er offered a toast and put down the white veil, instantly making everyone feel a strong reluctance to part, feeling a sense of loss as if someone had cut out their most beloved thing. She opened her mouth and said, "Xian'er wants to purchase a medicinal ingredient from everyone. If you don't have it, then information about the whereabouts of the medicinal ingredient is also fine. Xian'er will reward you greatly. Fairy Zhu, please speak." "Right, to be able to serve Fairy Zhu, that is our honor. Go through water and tread on fire, and die 10,000 deaths without hesitation." Everyone called out one after another, and even quite a few girls' faces were filled with fanaticism. Zhu Xian'er's pretty face didn't show any expression, and she said, "The material Xian'er wants is a 7th-level medicinal herb called Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass." Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass, what is that? Never heard of it. Quite a few people immediately shook their heads, but Ling Han was startled, because Crimson Red Chilling Ice Grass was one of the 2 main ingredients he needed. He didn't think he'd actually come into conflict with Zhu Xian'er. If the two competed, it could be imagined that countless people would definitely hate him. Who cared? So what if she was an absolute beauty? She couldn't even compare to a hair of his old man. Fairy Zhu, I know where the crimson red chilling ice grass is. A youngster stood up very excitedly, and without needing to be urged, he already spilled it out. 3 months ago, I just came out of the dark demon forest and heard someone mention the crimson red chilling ice grass. It should be in the depths of the dark demon forest. Hiss. Everyone gasped. The dark demon forest was one of the more famous danger zones in the north region. There were flower blossom tier beasts in the depths of the forest, and normally, no one dared to enter deep into it. Fairy Zhu, the dark demon forest is too dangerous, why not wait 2 years? Nonsense, Fairy Zhu needs the crimson red chilling ice grass to save someone, can she afford to wait 2 years? Then you want Fairy Zhu to enter the depths of the dark demon forest and risk her life? That's right, in another 2 years, maybe Fairy Zhu can advance into the flower blossom tier, and then there'll be no need to fear. Ling Han's heart palpitated with eagerness. There was actually crimson red chilling ice grass in the dark demon forest, and he received orders to pick 7 stalks of fiery sun grass. Originally, he had no intention to pay attention to it, but now, there seemed to be a mysterious hand pushing him. Come, he had to go to the dark demon forest. Zhu Xian'er was a bit worried at first. That person publicly revealed the whereabouts of the crimson red chilling ice grass, which might cause trouble. But thinking again, how many people dared to enter the dark demon forest? She thanked that person, and promised that if he encountered any trouble in the future, he could go to the half-moon sect to find her. Because she was in a hurry to find the crimson red chilling ice grass, she soon bid farewell and left. With her departure, the atmosphere instantly plummeted. Everyone had no mood, and many people also exchanged for the treasures they liked, so they bid farewell and left one after another. Ling Han was also very satisfied. On this trip, he not only obtained the gold silk thousand spark fruit, but also news of the crimson red chilling ice grass. Go back and refine the gold silk thousand spark fruit. Chapter 383. Ling Han. Many flower blossom tier warriors roared angrily. This youngster was too young, making it hard for them to feel reverence towards a heaven-grade alchemist. Ling Han cracked a smile, but acted as if he didn't hear. The massive golem was very gloomy, this stone pillar was truly unpalatable. It repeatedly turned its head towards Ling Han, hoping to obtain Master's permission to stop gnawing on these stones. Alright, if you want to see Yu Hong Chang, I'll let you see her, Ao Feng said. He was a descendant of the spiritual infant tier, so his words were obviously more effective than normal flower blossom tier warriors. With a wave of his hand, someone immediately left. Ling Han frowned. Ao Feng's anger wasn't that intense, and there was even a hint of a proud smile in the depths of his eyes. Could it be that they already guessed his relationship with Yu Hong Chang? This wasn't impossible, after all, a heaven-grade alchemist inexplicably asking for a person he'd never met before, wasn't this worth pondering? Thinking again about their ages, and the Winter Moon sect just recruited a batch of disciples from the Rain Country, could it be that they couldn't find out some information about Ling Han? Were they deliberately putting on an act now just to test him? Ling Han sneered. He obviously didn't run over for a momentary conflict, but also had a trump card. Not long after, 2 spiritual pedestal tier warriors escorted a woman over. That woman was no more than 40 years old, and her face had a melancholy expression, yet it didn't hide her beauty. If one looked closely, she looked somewhat similar to Ling Han. This was definitely Yu Hong Chang. Ling Han didn't even need to ask, there was a connection from their bloodline that made him certain that this was his birth mother. Grandmaster Ling, now that you've brought her here, do you have anything to say? Ao Feng asked calmly, as if everything was under his control. Ling Han stood with his hands clasped behind his back, and said, release her. Junior sister apprentice Hong Chang, don't you think that this young man looks very familiar? Ao Feng asked Yu Hong Chang. Ever since Yu Hong Chang had arrived, her gaze had been fixed on Ling Han. There was disbelief and excitement in her expression, and even her body had begun to tremble. She ignored Ao Feng, and continued to stare at Ling Han as if it would never be enough. Grandmaster Ling, I heard that you were born in Rain Country, one of the 9 nations of the desolate north. You came from a small town under the rule of De Yuan City, and your father's name is Ling. What's your name again? Ao Feng had been snubbed, but did not take it to heart, and asked Ling Han again. When she heard this, Yu Hong Chang's expression became even more excited. However, she immediately recovered her cold demeanor, and said, I don't know this young man, bring me back. Junior sister apprentice Hong Chang, seeing the son that you have not seen for 18 years, you are still so cold? Ao Feng sneered. He had finally thrown out a heavy bomb. Hong, when they heard these words, the people of the Winter Moon sect were all in an uproar. So Ling Han's mother was actually a disciple of the Winter Moon sect. Furthermore, her identity was not ordinary at all. No wonder Ling Han would ask for a person for no reason. So there was a reason for this in the first place. I don't know what nonsense you are talking about. Yu Hong Chang's expression was calm. Yet Ling Han revealed a smile, and said, Mother, there is no need to hide it. Today, I am bringing you back to reunite with father. Instantly, the whole mountaintop was in an uproar. This speculation was one thing, but having it confirmed was another. A dignified heaven-grade alchemist actually had such a deep relationship with the Winter Moon sect. However, the relationship between the two parties was not harmonious at all. When she heard him call her mother, Yu Hong Chang's tears instantly flowed out. She had forcefully resisted the urge to acknowledge her son. Wasn't it because she did not want to give others a handle to use against her and allow the Winter Moon sect to use her to threaten her son? But she had never thought that her son would actually acknowledge her in public. She had not seen her biological son for 18 years, and now that she heard him call her mother, she completely lost control of her emotions and cried bitterly. If it were not for the fact that she was being held back by someone, she really wanted to pull Ling Han into her arms and kiss him to her heart's content. 18 years, a whole 18 years. Ha 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 ha. Ao Feng laughed loudly, but it was incomparably cold. He had never thought that the little evil creature that he had not killed in a moment of leniency had actually become a heaven-grade alchemist, someone that could stand on equal footing with the various great sect masters. Now, it was already very difficult to kill Ling Han, especially when Ling Han still had the inheritance of the 12 palaces on him, which was even related to a divine treasure trove. If the Winter Moon sect directly killed him and seized the treasure, he was sure that all the forces of the North region would attack the Winter Moon sect together in the name of taking revenge for a heaven-grade alchemist. However, there was no problem in keeping Ling Han in the Winter Moon sect. As long as Ling Han himself admitted that he was willing to stay here, who could meddle in other people's business? And it was also very easy to make Ling Han voluntarily stay, and that was Yu Hong Chang. Using Yu Hong Chang's life as a threat, there was no need to fear that Ling Han would not listen obediently. But no matter what, Ao Feng could not feel happy. This little bastard was a stain on his life. The woman who should have become his wife gave birth to another man's son. Whenever it came to Ling Han, he would feel that he was cuckolded. Unfortunately, whether to kill Ling Han or not was no longer something he could decide. This was the decision of the Winter Moon sect's higher-ups, and it was the embodiment of the will of the 9 old monsters of the spiritual infant tier. Grandmaster Ling, since you've recognized your kin, you can stay in the sect from now on. Additionally, I will invite your father over so that your family can reunite, Ao Feng said menacingly. Would he be so kind as to let the son of his enemy be killed in front of him? Not only that, he would also bring the man who had cuckolded him, and keep him hanging in front of him all day long. If it was used as a threat, one was enough. Killing the other would be enough, and it would be just nice to make an example out of him. Grandmaster Ling, since we've already shown such sincerity, shouldn't you also show some expression? Ao Feng said with a smile. In the entire extreme Yang city, the number of spoiled brats that could refute Lu Qiyuan's face could be counted on one's fingers, and Ling Han definitely wasn't one of them. Unless Gong Letian was willing to risk everything to protect Ling Han, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to stop Lu Qiyuan. After all, Gong Letian couldn't possibly stay and forget not forever, right? Zhu Wujiu, however, was amused. He knew Lu Jitong's identity. He was Lu Qiyuan's grandfather, the pillar of support for the Lu family. However, old man Lu was now standing quietly by Ling Han's side, obedient as if he was Ling Han's alchemy boy. The more Lu Qiyuan jumped around now, the more miserable he'd cry when the time came. He had no intention of reminding Lu Qiyuan, and leisurely said, "Young Master Lu, the extreme Yang city is full of crouching tigers and hidden dragons, it's better to be humble." What a joke, a mere gushing spring tear. Nobody dares to lecture this young master, take him down. Lu Qiyuan's gaze became stern, and a spiritual ocean tear martial artist immediately leaped out, grabbing towards Zhu Wujiu. This was naturally easy, and Zhu Wujiu immediately fell into the opponent's hands. "Slap him," Lu Qiyuan said coldly. Pa, 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 that spiritual ocean tear martial artist immediately slapped Zhu Wujiu's face. Zhu Wujiu only gritted his teeth, but didn't beg for mercy, nor did he call for help. He had the intention to drag Lu Qiyuan into the water, because Lu Jitong definitely wouldn't punish him heavily for the previous disturbance, but if he was beaten miserably, would Lu Jitong have the nerve to punish him lightly? He always felt very guilty, not being able to share Ling Han's worries and difficulties. Thus, when encountering this kind of thing, he'd rather suffer a bit himself and drag Lu Qiyuan into the water. Chapter 386. Don't think that Lu Jitong was a good person. On the contrary, being able to sit in his position, how could he possibly be a soft-hearted person? Not only had Lang Junkai been executed by him, even the Lang clan had accused the old man of a groundless crime. He had all the experts killed, and the remaining women, children, old, and young were chased out of extreme Yang city. He was truly vicious and merciless, almost wiping out the Lang clan. The old man certainly had a reason to be angry. Originally, Lu Qiyuan wouldn't have come into conflict with Ling Han at all, and it was completely instigated by Lang Junkai. If he hadn't been present that day, what would have happened to Lu Qiyuan? This was equivalent to killing his grandson, so the old man obviously wouldn't be polite when he acted. In just one day, the Lang clan completely disappeared from the extreme Yang city, showing the shocking ability of an Earth-grade alchemist. Ling Han was also an Earth-grade alchemist, which meant that as long as he revealed his identity, he could obtain the same status and power as Lu Jitong. However, because of the potential threat of the Thousand Corpse sect, Ling Han didn't want to reveal his identity so quickly. Thus, he took a detour and pulled Lu Jitong along. With an Earth-grade alchemist backing up the restaurant and medicine shop, he similarly didn't need to have any worries. Next, he was going to the Dark Demon Forest, and Lu Yutong and the others naturally had to help him take care of the two shops. Thus, with an Earth-grade alchemist supporting them, he was naturally at ease. Otherwise, why would he need to specially subdue Lu Jitong? Ling Han made some arrangements. He didn't plan on bringing anyone on this trip to the Dark Demon Forest, but after Hunyo found out, she immediately made a big fuss and insisted on following him. Thinking of the little girl's speed, Ling Han knew that he couldn't get rid of her, so he could only nod and agree. However, he hadn't set off yet when he received an invitation from the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, asking him to attend a banquet. Ling Han thought it was about the bone-forming pills auction, which involved his profits, so he obviously didn't have anything to think about, and happily agreed to attend the banquet. Hunyo was a little mischievous, and insisted on following him, so they went to the banquet together. When they arrived at the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, he and Hunyo were led into an elegant courtyard. A square table was placed in the courtyard's courtyard, and there were already two people sitting there. both were women. One was dressed in white, and even her face was covered with a white veil. Her skin was like snow, and it was impossible to tell which part was white and which part was skin. Her hair was like clouds, and it was like a waterfall. Zhu Xian Erling Han was slightly stunned. Had he guessed wrong? This banquet wasn't about the bone-forming pill. The other woman looked to be around 21 or 22 years old. She wore a long red dress and had a fiery figure. Her curves were astonishing, and her face was also extremely beautiful. Her fiery red lips were filled with a fiery charm. Seeing Ling Han walk over with Hunyo's small hand in his, the red-clothed girl immediately stood up, smiled, and said, "Young Master Ling, please." Zhu Xian'er also stood up, but did not speak. She only bowed slightly at Ling Han. "Young Master Ling, my surname is Yin, and my name is Lan," the red-clothed beauty introduced herself. "This is Miss Zhu Xian'er, Sister Zhu, this is Ling Han, young Master Ling." However, he has an even more impressive identity, a low-level Earth-grade alchemist. Zhu Xian'er was truly shocked now. How old was Ling Han? Was he even 20? And which Earth-grade alchemists weren't old men or women in their 50s or 60s? Hunyo looked at Ling Han for a while, and instantly revealed an expression of protecting her food. Chapter 387. On the spiritual pedestal of the heavenly spirit sea, 5 colored divine flowers also bloomed. Although there was no wind, they swayed lightly, exuding an aura that transcended the mundane. Ling Han opened his eyes. He had finally returned to the flower blossom tier. This was an important juncture, and from a certain perspective, this represented the first step he had taken to return to the peak. Young Master Han. Everyone was startled awake, and they all came over to greet him. Han, have you suffered? Yu Hong Chang, meanwhile, pulled on Ling Han's arm, and looked him up and down. Previously, when she saw Ling Han's pained expression, she could not come over to ask, so she kept thinking about it. No, everything is going smoothly now, Ling Han said with a smile. Congratulations, young Master Han. Zhu Wujiu and Guang Yuan both lagged behind. They naturally did not dare to compete with these female soldiers. And they were also very emotional. How long had it been, and an 18-year-old youngster had shockingly become a super elite of the flower blossom tier. In the desolate north, he would be an absolutely invincible existence. Ling Han nodded, and said, "Wait for me to deal with a few pieces of trash first, and we'll drink together tonight." After saying so, he stepped out of the black tower. Brat! Elder Tianju and the tanned old man charged over at the same time, and behind them were 4 corpse soldiers, exuding a faint golden luster. However, the 8 spiritual infant tier elites of the Winter Moon sect chose to sit on the sidelines and watch. Obviously, they were wary of the immortal's corpse in Ling Han's hands. If Ling Han didn't use it, they definitely wouldn't dare to go up, as that would be courting death. What a pity, he had originally wanted to trick more people. When Elder Tianju and the tanned old man pounced, Ling Han casually waved his hand, and a set of immortal's corpse was already unleashed by him. Presumably, this old man had been dead for who knew how many years, so he wouldn't mind being tormented like this again. "Old man, in the future, I'll definitely give you a grand funeral," Ling Han said in his mind. Pa, the 2 great elders of the Thousand Corpse sect immediately fell to the ground. Under the suppression of the immortal's aura, they had no power to resist at all, but the 4 corpse soldiers were completely unaffected. They had no consciousness in the first place, so how could they possibly be suppressed by the immortal's aura? For golden-armored corpses were existences in the spiritual infant tier, so how terrifying were they? Ling Han didn't use the power boost from the Black Tower at the first instant, but instead activated the Thunder Battle Armor. Instantly, a flash of lightning spread out, forming a barrier of lightning around his body. He, too, immediately retreated. He wasn't arrogant enough to face the 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers head-on. One after another, memories recovered in his mind, and Ling Han's feet naturally began to move. Demon Fairy Step. This was a heaven-grade movement technique that could only be used after advancing into the Flower Blossom tier, and didn't belong to mortals. In his previous life, he had specialized in cultivating the Demon Fairy Step, and had always used it even when he was in the Heaven tier. A sense of familiarity that he hadn't felt for a long time welled up in his heart, and Ling Han couldn't help but feel a great sense of heroism. Under the bombardment of 4 great spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, he moved freely. How agile was a high-level heaven-grade movement technique. The level of martial arts in the North region was low. Even the strongest forces like the Winter Moon sect and the Beast Emperor sect only had cultivation techniques that were only Earth-grade medium level, and martial arts techniques were the same, at most Earth-grade high level. Could this compare to a heaven-grade martial arts technique? The greatest characteristic of corpse soldiers was their endurance to beatings. They didn't fear death or pain, but in battle, they only relied on the instincts they had when they were alive. If they could still use the same martial arts techniques as when they were alive, then it would be too unreasonable. How could such an attack possibly do anything to Ling Han, who had used the Demon Fairy Step? Could this be the inheritance that Brat obtained in the 12 palaces? It's truly shocking. Under the siege of 4 corpse soldiers, he could easily move about, and would only occasionally be swept by the overflowing power, but that battle armor on his body is enough to block it. Why does this battle armor look like the Thunder battle armor? It can't be, right? Isn't the Thunder battle armor unable to be revived? Moreover, it's not in the hands of a disciple of our sect, and it's called something Han. Han Lin. Hiss. The 8 spiritual infant tier elites of the Winter Moon sect all drew in a sharp breath at the same time. Wasn't Han Lin referring to Ling Han in reverse? Fuck. They were actually all deceived by Ling Han, and had a secret treasure stolen from the Winter Moon sect by this brat. The might of this Thunder battle armor on Ling Han's body could even easily block the residual power of a spiritual infant tier elite. What kind of value was this? We must snatch it back. The 8 of them all said, their eyes burning with passion. Under the attacks of 4 corpse soldiers, that brat is unknowingly distancing himself from that terrifying corpse. That's great, we just have to wait until he's a bit further away, and then we'll seize the opportunity to make our move. Alright, this time, we'll definitely kill him in one strike. The 8 of them were all observing, waiting for a chance. Ling Han seemed to be fighting excitedly, completely forgetting that there were still 8 spiritual infant tier elites lying in ambush for him. However, this was also within reason. Now, he was being attacked by 4 spiritual infant tier corpse soldiers, so where would he have the leisure to look left and right? He continuously retreated, getting further and further away from that god's corpse. Now! The Grand Elder of the AO family and the others all shot out. Ling Han was now out of the range of influence of the god's corpse, so it was the best opportunity to make a move. Xiao, 5 people in front, and 3 behind, all charged over. I've been waiting for you all. Ling Han smirked coldly. He had the divine sense of the heaven tier, so how could he possibly overlook these 8 old things? This was precisely the tactic he had devised. In the first place, he had intentionally distanced himself from that god's corpse, which was why he was able to lure these 8 old guys out. When they heard these words, the hearts of the Grand Elder of the AO family and the others trembled at the same time, and a bad feeling welled up within them. Without any reason, this was their instinctive reaction, and being able to reach the spiritual infant tier, they had the utmost trust in instinctive reactions. Thus, they immediately stopped in their tracks, and wanted to turn around and retreat. Too late. Ling Han raised his right hand, and another god's corpse was tossed out. When, a terrifying aura swept over. Pa. The 5 great spiritual infant tier elites that were charging at the front immediately fell to the ground, while the other 3 stumbled, but still escaped the range of influence of the god's aura. After all, they were far away, so they were not too greatly affected. Ling Han secretly sighed in pity. However, the Grand Elder of the Ao family and Shi Heshuan were both among the 5 that fell to the ground, which made him very satisfied. These were the people he definitely had to kill. His feet moved, and the demon birth sword was already drawn, charging towards Shi Heshuan in passing. You dare! In the distance, the 3 great spiritual infant tier elites stomped their feet anxiously. The Winter Moon sect only had a total of 9 spiritual infant tier elites, and if 5 of them died here, then their power would be reduced by half, and they would practically fall out of the ranks of the 4 strongest forces. Why wouldn't I dare? Ling Han said coldly. With a slash, Shi Heshuan's head was sliced off by him, and instantly, blood gushed out madly. A mighty spiritual infant tier elite, the strongest existence in the North region, actually died in such a cowardly manner. He didn't even have time to use any secret techniques, and was lying on the ground like a dead dog, waiting to be trampled upon. What difference was there between him and a nameless soldier? On Shi Heshuan's head, his eyes were wide open, and he died with everlasting regret. Not only were there freaks like Rong Huanxian, Yan Tian Zhao, Ma Duobao, and Hun Yo, but there were also long-vanished formation masters. Why are you staring so intently? Do you want me to take off my clothes for you to enjoy? Yin Hong said through gritted teeth. Although there was a smile at the corner of her mouth, it emitted a dangerous aura. Ling Han didn't withdraw his gaze. He wasn't interested in Yin Hong's body at all, only the formation patterns on her body. He'd seen quite a few formations in his last life, but it was the first time he'd seen the formation patterns carved on the body. Formations are indeed a good thing, Ling Han said. If you don't mind, take off your clothes and let me study them. Get lost. Yin Hong hurriedly covered her chest and fled into the house, obviously to change into new clothes. Zhu Xian'er looked at Hun Yo with great shock. She couldn't see through Hun Yo, thinking that she didn't cultivate at all. Who would have thought that she'd make such a huge mistake? Not only did she awaken her spirit base, but she was also in the spiritual ocean tier. 5 or 6 years old, spiritual ocean tier, what kind of concept was that? In comparison, her cultivation wasn't even worth mentioning, the difference was too great. In the world of martial art, those below the flower blossom tier were all ants and mortals. Conversely, it could be said that the first 5 tiers were relatively simple, and even the youngest spiritual pedestal tier wasn't strange, but a 5 or 6 years old spiritual ocean tier? How could she not be shocked? Hun Yo's senses were amazing, and she immediately discovered Zhu Xian'er's gaze. She made a face at the latter, appearing very hostile. Ling Han smiled, and said, Miss Zhu, what do you need crimson red chilling ice grass for? Zhu Xian'er was slightly surprised, and said, so you were there that day. She paused, then continued, I need to concoct a heaven-grade medicinal pill, and crimson red chilling ice grass is one of the supplementary ingredients. Crimson red chilling ice grass could only be used as a supplementary ingredient. Who asked it to be a heaven-grade medicinal pill? Ling Han felt strange, and said, I heard that your master went mad, but I think that earth-grade medium level, at most high-level medicinal pill should be able to cure it, no need for heaven-grade. If it were another person who said this, Zhu Xian'er definitely wouldn't pay attention. However, Ling Han was a low-level earth-grade alchemist, and in terms of real status, he was far above her. Even the sect master of the Half-Moon sect would give some face to Ling Han. She said, my master suffered a Dao injury, and can't be cured unless it's a heaven-grade medicinal pill. Ling Han felt even more strange, and said, your master is at most in the spiritual infant tier, how could he suffer a Dao injury? Dao injury, also known as the injury of great Dao, was a backlash when comprehending the power of heaven and earth. These were not only earth-grade cultivation techniques, but their attributes were also different, suitable for people with various spirit bases. This was very rare. Mr. Ling is truly an extraordinary person. She sighed. Ling Han smiled, and said, someone asked me to concoct pills, but couldn't pay the price, so they could only use cultivation techniques to make up the numbers. This was the truth, but it was something that happened in the previous life. For example, Sword Emperor and Na Lan Tu were asked for 3 styles of black origin and wore elephant fist by him. Mr. Ling is so straightforward, then I won't hide my skills. Yin Hong wiped her right hand on the table, and 3 ancient books immediately appeared. They were definitely not made from ordinary materials, emitting an ancient aura by themselves. Ling Han picked up one of them. These 3 books were respectively written, Basic Basics of Formations 1, Basic Basics of Formations 2, and Basic Basics of Formations 3. He shook his head, and said, Lady Yin, I'll take out 10 earth-grade cultivation techniques, and you'll give me 3 formation basics. Yin Hong giggled, threw out another book, and said, plus this small heavenly origin spirit snake formation, no more. Otherwise, I'd rather not exchange. That's more like it. Ling Han picked up the small heavenly origin spirit snake formation, and revealed a smile. The array patterns could draw upon the power of heaven and earth, which was a kind of understanding, just like the will of martial art. If you understood it, then you understood it. If you didn't, then you didn't understand it. There was no way to tell the difference. To carve the array patterns, one had to first understand the formation. Thus, some people with a deep understanding were high-level formation masters, and some with a shallow understanding were low-level formation masters. In his previous life, Ling Han had studied various formations. Of course, at that time, he studied how to break them and how to find the holes in the formation, but this could be used as a reference. What's more, he also possessed the divine sense of heaven tier and the comprehension of martial art, so studying low-level formations was too easy. He constantly sighed, so that's how it is, and made rapid progress in the path of formations. 5 days later, he threw the 3 introductory formation books to the side, picked up a stone at random, and began carving array patterns on it. Every array pattern had to be completed in one go, without any pause. As long as there was a delay, it would affect the operation of the power of heaven and earth. A formation eye could at most have 3 pauses, otherwise it was equivalent to being scrapped. A 4th-level formation eye could carve at least 9 array patterns, and at most 15, all of which had to be squeezed onto such a small metal rod. The small Tianyuan spirit snake formation required 7 formation eyes to be set up, and each formation eye was limited to 15 formation patterns. It could be considered a high-grade formation among 4th-grade formations. From this point of view, Yin Hong's price was quite fair. Ling Han began to inscribe the formation patterns. When he had inscribed 15 formation patterns on a piece of rock, he examined them carefully and discovered that at least 8 of them were wrong. Moreover, the few that were not wrong also had many pauses. It was fine, he didn't expect to become a formation master immediately, so he'd take it slow. On the 11th day from extreme Yang City, Ling Han finally arrived at the outskirts of the Dark Demon Forest. The coachman was unwilling to advance any further, and after Ling Han alighted, he immediately whipped the horse and hurriedly left. This was an extremely chaotic place. It wasn't occupied by any power, but it just so happened that this place was rich in spirit grasses. It attracted a large number of powers to come here to gather spirit grasses. Because of the huge profits, conflicts often broke out here. Blood and deaths were normal things. There was no ruler in the Dark Demon Forest, but there were 4 relatively stronger forces. Because they had developed in the Dark Demon Forest, they were equivalent to local tyrants. Anyone who has not arrived at the east gate of the town in 15 minutes' time will be killed without mercy. Ling Han nodded, and said, that Na Zhiyan is indeed very favored. When he was assassinated, the imperial guards were actually dispatched to pursue the murderer. Hang, but there were 7 high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors chasing after us. Thankfully, we were quick-witted and ran away quickly, Lu Ru'er said proudly. Young Master Han. Zhu Wujiu's voice was heard from outside the door. Ling Han thought for a moment, then said, send those people away. You can teach them a suitable lesson, but there is no need to kill them. Yes. Zhu Wujiu received his orders and left. He was now in the 3rd layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and had also refined the heavenly luck stone. His battle prowess had soared to 11 battle stars, and he was definitely one of the strongest in Fire Country. Yet Ling Han sighed. With such a ruckus, the Ling clan residents would have to move again. This pair of sisters really kept creating trouble for him. Hey, that little follower of yours could also deal with those imperial guards outside? Those are all high-level spiritual ocean tier warriors. Lu Ru'er called out in disbelief. Don't be impatient. Ling Han pressed his hands together, and casually asked, is Yun Shuang still well? She's very well. She is now a famous entertainer in the imperial city, and everyone would be proud to hear Lady Shuang personally play a song. Who knows how many people want to marry her? Lu Ru'er said, looking at Ling Han a little mischievously, thinking of Ling Han's disappointed expression. How could Ling Han possibly take Yun Shuang to heart? He had only thought of her when he thought of this pair of sisters, and so asked in passing. After a short while, Zhu Wujiu returned, and said at the door, young Master Han, the matter has been resolved. Do you have any other instructions? Ling Han nodded, and said, go and rest. Yes. Only then did Zhu Wujiu leave. Lu Feng'er and her sisters' faces were filled with shock. After a while, Lu Ru'er finally said, hey, is that subordinate of yours boasting? Ling Han shrugged, and said, can you still hear the barking of dogs now? Lu Ru'er was startled at first, and only then did she realize that Ling Han had referred to those imperial guards as dogs. She could not help but giggle, but immediately covered her mouth with her hand, and said, I really can't hear them anymore. Lu Feng'er's face was also filled with shock, and she said, young Master Han, those are all high-level spiritual ocean tier martial artists. Ling Han laughed, and said, the trouble has been resolved. You two can also leave, and never see each other again. Encountering you two is definitely not a good thing. Hey, we're not jinxes. Chapter 392. This was a herbalist team, with 7 martial artists as guards and 12 herbalist farmers, all carrying bamboo baskets. There was also a red-clothed beauty who looked like the owner, a total of 20 people. A herbalist team of this scale could only be considered a small-scale team in the Dark Demon Forest, with over 100 or even over 1,000 herbalist teams. Ling Han's eyes swept over them. The 7 guards were actually all in the spiritual ocean tier, which was quite impressive. The one who sent the invitation was a sturdy man in his 40s. He was tall and well-built, his arms were so thick that they surpassed Ling Han's waist, and his muscles were shockingly strong. Without waiting for Ling Han to answer, the red-clothed woman spoke first, somewhat displeased, Guard Wu, you want to recruit people into the team, why don't you ask for my opinion first? The burly man laughed and said, before we set off, we agreed that we would recruit a total of 10 guards, but now we have only recruited 7. As the captain of the guards, of course I have the right to recruit people. That's because the others aren't qualified, the red-clothed woman said. He's qualified. The sturdy man pointed at Ling Han. The 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, still not enough? What, such a youngster was actually at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier? The others were shocked, feeling that Ling Han was too young. Miss Ding, let him join the team. Yeah, the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, not weak. the other guards all urged. The cultivation of the fifth layer of the spiritual ocean tier wasn't high, but advancing to this level in his teens meant that Ling Han's background wasn't simple. Although this was an extremely chaotic place, if there were sects like the Winter Moon sect or the Half Moon sect, then they could save lives at crucial moments. So, these people obviously wouldn't oppose Ling Han joining, adding insurance to their lives. The red-clothed woman thought, and said, "All right, but Guard Wu, you're responsible for making sure he doesn't cause trouble." "Deal." The sturdy man nodded with a smile, then cracked a smile at Ling Han, and said, "Little bro, how about one origin crystal a day? Such a good job isn't something you can encounter every day." Spiritual Ocean Realm warriors could only condense one origin crystal a month, but now, they could get one in a day. The treatment was indeed not bad. Ling Han couldn't help but laugh. "You guys are talking to yourselves. I don't think I said I wanted to join you." So you still have an opinion?" The woman in red wasn't very happy to begin with. When she heard that Ling Han was against joining them, she immediately became even more dissatisfied. "How dare you? Slap his face." Ling Han shook his head. He felt that he was really unjustly implicated. He was just taking a stroll and didn't provoke anyone. How did he get into trouble? Could it be that he really had a troublesome constitution and would cause trouble wherever he went? "Do you think I'm easy to bully?" Angered, he raised his hand and slapped the red-clothed woman. "Stop!" The 7 guards shouted at the same time and moved to block Ling Han. These people's tier varied, but the weakest was at the 6th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, while the strongest reached the 9th layer. However, none of them had battle prowess that surpassed their tier. After all, most of them were very normal. Ling Han laughed lightly, and instantly, sword intent burst forth. Shio, 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 7 flashes of sword chi shot out, slicing towards the 7 guards. What was his battle prowess? When he was at the 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he had 16 stars, and now it shot up to 20 stars. Compared to the strongest person on the other side, his battle prowess surpassed 11 stars. This was an absolute suppression. Thus, within the 7 flashes of sword chi, the 7 guards were sent flying at the same time. Fortunately, Ling Han was merciful and only left a wound on each of their chests. Otherwise, one strike would have taken their lives. "Pa!" The red-clothed woman's face was slapped solidly, and 3 of her teeth were knocked out. Don't always look at people with dog eyes. This slap is a small lesson for you. If there's a next time, I'll take your life, Ling Han said coldly. The red-clothed woman clenched her teeth and had an expression of disbelief on her pretty face. Firstly, Ling Han was only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, yet he could send her 7 guards flying with one strike. Secondly, this guy actually dared to hit her. She was a noble daughter of the Ding family, and she was as beautiful as a flower. Was this guy blind to even lay his hands on such a beautiful face? Ling Han turned and left. Whether it was the 7 guards or the farmers, they were all silent. Ling Han's strength surpassed their imagination, and they still hadn't recovered from the shock. "A bunch of trash," the red-clothed woman rebuked angrily. She covered her red and swollen pretty face, and said, "Quickly go to Rising Wind Stronghold, clan brother Gao Yang is there. Ask him to deal with that damned brat. Miss Ding, that youngster has the cultivation of the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at such a young age, and his battle prowess is even more shocking. He definitely has a great background, so why don't we just let it go," the brawny man surnamed Wu advised. Since he was the one who invited her, he felt somewhat responsible. In the Dark Devil Forest, so what if he has a great background? He died in vain. The red-clothed woman's gaze was bitter, she couldn't swallow this insult. "Let's go." The group continued forward. After walking for half a day, a stronghold appeared in front of Ling Han. This was the territory of the Gust Demon clan, providing a place to shelter from the wind and rain for martial artists. Ling Han also wanted to inquire about the crimson-red chilling ice grass, so he entered the stronghold at the price of 1 origin crystal. The stronghold wasn't too big, but it had the area of a small village. The outer perimeter was made of sturdy tree trunks as a defensive wall, while the houses inside were made of bamboo, with extremely poor soundproofing. This place really had all sorts of people. Ling Han noticed that there were a great many women dressed in revealing clothes standing by the roadside, casting flirtatious glances at the passers-by. If they caught their eye, they would leave in a group, and very soon, moaning sounds that could make one's blood boil could be heard from within the bamboo houses. For martial artists, after experiencing a tense adventure, they naturally hoped to relax a bit. Where there was a need, there would be a market. Even in a dangerous place like the Dark Devil Forest, the most ancient industry was nurtured. Chapter 394. Damn Guy. The brawny man was called Pu Chuan, at the third layer of the spiritual ocean tier, which wasn't considered weak. He could come and go as he pleased, and could barely be called an elite. But he was forced to kneel and beg for mercy to Ling Han in front of everyone's eyes. How humiliating was that? With such a great enmity, and coveting Ling Han's belongings, how could he let Ling Han leave without doing anything? A mere fifth-layer spiritual ocean tier spoiled brat's battle prowess definitely didn't surpass 4 stars. Even if he couldn't beat him alone, there were still 9 people here, right? Youngster, hand over your spatial ring obediently, and we'll let you live, another person said. This was obviously a lie. After getting the spatial ring, they'd make their move. Ling Han smiled and said to Hunyo, Nyo, are you calling me an idiot? Ling Han obviously isn't an idiot. Ling Han is a smart person, Hunyo quickly said, then patted her small chest and added, Nyo is also a smart person, hehe, but someone insisted on playing me like a monkey. Ling Han shook his head. Hunyo instantly revealed a ferocious glint and said, Nyo will bite them all to death. Nyo, don't kill with your mouth, it's too dirty. Ling Han rubbed her small head. Hunyo instantly nodded repeatedly. Although she never thought biting people to death was dirty, since Ling Han didn't like it, she obviously avoided doing it. You guys, have you had enough? Pu Chuan and the others were furious. This adult and child actually dared to tease them. But strangely, they didn't seem to see this little girl yesterday, right? It probably followed him into the village and stayed in the bamboo layer all this time. Everyone quickly understood what was going on. Since he's disobedient, then we'll just kill him to avoid any more trouble, Pu Chuan and the others clamored. In the entire stronghold, there were waves and waves of people who had designs on Ling Han, so they naturally had to make the first move to gain the upper hand, lest others snatch him away. I'll do it. Pu Chuan immediately jumped out. Chang, his long saber was unsheathed, and he slashed at Ling Han. Hunyo moved. Xiao, in an instant, she had leaped into the air above Pu Chuan. Pa, her small fist shot out. Suddenly, Pu Chuan's head spun 7 or 8 times around his neck. The skin on his neck was twisted off, and his head fell off. Pu! Blood spurted 30 feet high like a blood fountain before it quickly fell back down. Martial artists had vigorous chi and blood, especially those in the spiritual ocean tier. Even if their heads were chopped off, they didn't die immediately. Instead, they waved their arms and legs for a while before crashing to the ground, but their arms and legs were still twitching. Hiss, how is this possible? In any case, Pu Chuan had the cultivation of the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier, yet he was killed in 1 punch. Moreover, the one who did it was a little girl who looked only 5 or 6 years old. How could anyone believe this? Ho! Hunyo bared her teeth and roared, once again charging out. Pa, 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 with each punch, she quickly reaped lives. With her terrifying speed, even spiritual pedestal tier warriors would have a headache, not to mention spiritual ocean tier warriors. They didn't even have the power to resist, and all of them had their heads blown off by her punches. Run! Of the 10 people, only 3 were left, and they all broke into a run. However, it was a joke to compete with Hunyo in terms of speed. In the time of 2 breaths, the 3 people's hearts had all exploded with a single punch. 10 people, all killed. Hunyo wasn't done yet, and her fierce gaze looked behind her. Her divine sense was extremely sensitive, and she discovered that there were more people behind. However, the distance was too far, and she couldn't discover each person's specific location in a short time. Run! Those people were clear that 10 spiritual ocean tier warriors were actually killed by a little girl as easily as crushing dry weeds. This kind of battle prowess was absolutely abnormal. They didn't want to die, and hurriedly fled towards the stronghold. Ling Han only smiled, and didn't chase after them to start a massacre. Let's go. He held Hunyo's hand and continued forward. Truly not simple. On a large tree in the distance, an old man in his 60s stared at the entire process. Ding Gao Yang, not only that youngster, but that little girl is also a monster. That speed, tisk tsk, is extremely shocking. Behind the old man stood Ding Gaoyang and Ding Wanqing. Their expressions were quite respectful. Elder Mo, you're a spiritual pedestal tier warrior, no matter how freakish they are, they can't possibly be your match. Ding Gaoyang hurriedly flattered. Elder Mo enjoyed it, revealing a smile, and said, to deal with 2 spiritual ocean tier warriors, the price tag won't be the same as before, it'll have to be doubled. Ding Gaoyang instantly revealed a pained expression. Could it be cheap to ask a spiritual pedestal tier warrior to act? Now it had to be doubled. He could only hope that the things that Ling Han brought were worth the price, or else he'd suffer a huge loss. Elder Mo glanced at Ding Wanqing again, revealing an extremely infatuated expression, and said, also, let Wanqing stay at my place tonight. Ding Gaoyang was about to jump up. This old man was too much. He was actually coveting his woman. He snorted and said, Old Mo, don't go too far. Don't forget who my brother is. Elder Mo couldn't help but tremble. Xian was a figure on the prodigy roll 2 years ago, and his ranking wasn't low either. Anyone who could be on this roll, as long as they didn't die, would definitely reach the flower blossom tier in the future. There had never been an exception. This was the Dark Demon Forest, where fists spoke. If he offended Xian, the consequences would be unthinkable. Even the Gale Demon Hall wouldn't stand up for him, and his death would be in vain. Then double the reward. Elder Mo snorted coldly, leaping down from the top of the tree, and charged in Ling Han and Hunyo's direction. He was displeased, so he took it out on these 2. Follow, I want to see how that brat dies, Ding Wanqing said to Ding Gaoyang. The 2 also chased. How fast was the spiritual pedestal tier's speed? Ling Han and Hunyo didn't walk too fast, so in a minute or 2, Elder Mo already caught up. The presence of the spiritual pedestal tier spread out, extremely terrifying. Brat, leave your life, he said menacingly. Ling Han stopped, turned around, glanced at the other, and said, if I remember correctly, you should be one of the guards in the stronghold, surnamed Mo, right? Gaga, that's right. Elder Mo laughed strangely. Since you know my identity, why don't you surrender? As they spoke, Ding Gaoyang and Ding Wanqing also arrived. Ling Han glanced at Ding Gaoyang, and couldn't help but realize that this was the middle-aged man who told him about the place where cold and heat intertwined in the morning. So he was deliberately luring him out of the stronghold so that people could deal with him. He laughed loudly, and said, Old man, one moment you're a guard, the next moment you're a bandit, your old face really knows how to change. How dare you? Elder Mo was furious, and struck out with a palm from afar. Origin power blasted out, turning into a giant palm that slapped towards Ling Han. This was a furious attack from a spiritual pedestal tier elite. Wouldn't the power be shocking? Chapter 395. Ordinary stones, with a sliver of source power. Small tower very quickly transmitted its divine sense to him. Ordinary. Ling Han was surprised. Stones that could directly increase the cultivation of flower blossom tier, how could they be ordinary? If there were countless of these ordinary stones, it was guaranteed that even a pig could advance to the shattering void tier. Even becoming a god was not impossible. It would not be an exaggeration to call them divine stones, so how could they be ordinary? Origin power. Ling Han shook his head. Why don't I feel it? It's not origin power, but source power, Small Tower explained. Ling Han was startled, and said, like the chaos source rock source power. That's right, but the amount is pitifully small. I don't care to extract it at all, Small Tower said very proudly. That was right. Ling Han bared his teeth. You're doing this on purpose, aren't you? He said, I don't mind if you give me some, the more the better. He did not need to comprehend martial arts, but his parents did. If there was a large amount of this kind of ore, he believed that Ling Dongxing and Yu Hongchang would be able to smoothly break through to the flower blossom tier. He suddenly understood why the Fire Emperor wanted to obtain these ores at all costs. That was because this would allow the Fire Emperor, who did not have any cultivation techniques and did not have sufficient comprehension ability, to complete a great leap to transcend mortality. However, if he wanted to persuade the Fire Emperor to stop, it would be a bit difficult. Because this involved a leap of a major tier, and also an additional 200 years of lifespan. If one did not enter the flower blossom tier, a mortal only had a mere 100 years of lifespan, and the Fire Emperor had at least completed half of it. Stopping him from entering the flower blossom tier was equivalent to taking away his life, so he believed that this Fire Emperor would definitely not be easily persuaded. If he won't listen, then I'll just have to beat him until he agrees. Ling Han thought violently. These ores also contain an extremely high amount of violent factors. If you absorb too much, with your current cultivation level, you will definitely not be able to control it. Your personality will change greatly, and you will become a madman who only knows how to kill, Small Tower replied. When Ling Han heard this, he immediately dispelled the idea of giving his parents some of these ores, and said, even the Black Tower is unable to dispel this kind of emotion. Human nature is the most difficult thing to fathom. Unless I can completely wipe out your memories, Small Tower suggested. Then forget it. Ling Han hurriedly shook his head. He did not want to wipe out the memories of his parents, and turn them into complete strangers. Furthermore, he had a very high chance of sending his parents up to the flower blossom tier as soon as possible. With an extra 200 years, he should be able to enter into the realm of immortals and obtain a divine pill for his parents, allowing them to reach the heavens in a single step. Ling Han was still very confident in his own talent in alchemy. Ling Han decided to first deal with Na Ji Yen and the Fire Emperor, and then return to study this mine to see what exactly was hidden inside. The two of them very quickly exited the mine, and walked towards the city walls. Halt, the guards called out again. The order they had received was that no one was allowed to leave this place. Bo Wen Lin also appeared, a cold smirk appearing at the corners of his lips, and said, young man, you really do not know what's good for you. You even dare to enter this mine of death. Now, you only have less than half a day to live. Ling Han smiled faintly. His fate was extremely tough, so unless he stayed in the mine for a few years, he would not be cursed. Moreover, even if he was really cursed, didn't he still have the Black Tower? This divine tool had an extraordinary ability in the area of dispelling evil and curses. Since I only have half a day to live, then I have to make a big fuss, he said, pretending to be crazy. Bo Wen Lin instantly looked wary. Previously, he had not made a move because he felt that Ling Han was not someone to be trifled with. And now, this guy who was not someone to be trifled with only had less than half a day to live. That was even worse. Who would be willing to risk their lives against someone who was definitely going to die? Youngster, you are already someone who is definitely going to die, so I can't be bothered to lower myself to your level. However, I will follow you and watch you die, he said. Ling Han revealed a mischievous grin, and said, do you really dare to follow me wherever I go? Ha, there are places in this world that I, Bo Wen Lin, do not dare to go. Bo Wen Lin laughed coldly. Then come, Ling Han said with a smile. He strode forwards, heading in the direction of the imperial city. Meanwhile, Bo Wen Lin had also stopped the guards here. Otherwise, how could these people possibly be a match for Ling Han? Ling Han did not walk very quickly, and only entered the imperial city after nearly half an hour. Quick, quick, we've captured 2 female assassins, and are just about to execute them in public at the East Gate. They had just entered when they heard the passers-by rushing around to spread the news, looking very excited, which attracted a lot of people to follow them. Female assassins, and there were 2 of them. Could they be Lu Feng and her sister? Ling Han immediately changed his route, and also headed in the direction of the East Gate. How had these 2 women leaked their identities and whereabouts, and actually ended up in the hands of the imperial family? He quickened his pace slightly, and it was only a matter of 1 or 2 minutes before he arrived at the East Gate. He saw that a high platform had been set up in a public square, and there were currently 2 women pressed down on the execution rack. Their hair was disheveled, and it was not clear what they looked like. However, with Ling Han's understanding of the aura of these 2 women, he was sure that they were the Lu sisters. Sigh, were these 2 really made to be assassins? On the side, there were people loudly announcing the crimes of these 2 women. They had assassinated an important official of the imperial court, Na Zhiyan, and had offended the might of heaven. Now, they would be executed in public as a warning to others. To execute these 2 beauties in public, and with such speed at that, it must have been because the Fire Emperor had forcefully excavated the mine, causing the people to seethe with discontent. Thus, he had deliberately executed these 2 women in such a high-profile manner to suppress the rebellious sentiments of the whole nation, especially in the imperial capital. Assassinated Na Zhiyan, Pei, then these 2 girls must be good people. The heavens are blind. They actually didn't kill that damned Na Zhiyan, and instead killed 2 good people. Shoo, lower your voice, do you not want your life anymore? The crowd discussed animatedly. They all expressed sympathy for Lu Feng and her sister, and hated Na Zhiyan to the bone. Ling Han did not immediately move to save them. He wanted the 2 women to learn from their mistakes and not become assassins in future. They were not made to be assassins at all. Bo Wen Lin naturally came over as well. He could not help but look shocked. This person who was about to die actually still had the mood to carry out an execution. How thick of a nerve did he have to have? The time has come, execute. An executioner walked onto the platform. He was bare-chested, and in his hand was a gigantic machete. He took a sip of wine, and then sprayed it onto the blade of the machete. He raised it high up in the air, and the blade of the machete reflected a sorrowful color under the setting sun. The cultivation level of Lu Feng and her sister had obviously been sealed, and for the majority of martial artists, if their cultivation level was sealed, they would not be able to circulate their origin power to protect their bodies. Thus, their defensive ability was actually not much higher than that of a normal person. This executioner was in element gathering tier. With a single slash, one of the sisters' heads would definitely roll to the ground. Schwa, the machete slashed down. But the imagined scene of a severed head falling to the ground and blood splattering did not appear. Instead, a young man suddenly appeared on the platform, and used a single hand to stop the descending machete. Chapter 396. Hunyo was completely fearless, her small body traversing freely among the blood patterns. If she really couldn't avoid them, she would use her claws and mouth to tear and bite, forcibly ripping and biting them apart. That terrifying ability made Ding Gao Yang and the other man dumbfounded. Two freaks, definitely two freaks. On the other side, Ling Han had completely gained the upper hand, not even using 3 styles of black origin. His right hand used 4 seasons sword technique, and his left hand clenched into a fist, continuously throwing out war elephant fist. Hong, 7 flashes of sword chi crisscrossed, with the sharpness of demon birth sword. Even spiritual pedestal tier warriors didn't dare to take it head-on, or else they'd be scratched, and in serious cases, their arms and legs would be broken. Ling Han, however, was somewhat displeased. He could only throw out 7 flashes of sword chi, and couldn't throw out 6 flashes of fist chi at the same time, the two couldn't stack. He was very depressed, but immediately laughed. If this could stack infinitely, then he could use sword, punch, and kick at the same time. How much chi could he throw out? Old man, it's time to end. Ling Han said. He didn't have time to tangle with the opponent. Zhu Xian'er came earlier than him, and this woman's charm was extremely high. Who knew how many people would help her find crimson-red chilling ice grass, so he had to hurry. Elder Mo was both furious and shocked. He, a dignified spiritual pedestal tier elite, was actually suppressed by a youngster. He was extremely unwilling, mainly because the 2 spirit tools on Ling Han's body were too domineering, making his attacks ineffective and his defenses pathetic. If this continued, he would really lose. Youngster, we have no grievances, and this old man was also deceived. Why don't we stop the battle, how about? He wanted to retreat, unable to think of a reason to fight to the death with Ling Han. He only took some benefits from Ding Gao Yang, and fighting for it wasn't worth it. Ling Han sneered, and said, truly laughable. You came to kill me, and if you could kill me, you definitely wouldn't be merciful. If you couldn't beat me, you actually said there was no grievance and wanted to leave. Old dog, is your brain stupid? Brat, you dare. Elder Mo trembled in anger, this brat's words were too vicious. His gaze sharpened as he said, do you really want to force this old man to risk his life? Whether you go all out or not, the result will be the same, Ling Han said indifferently. He took a deep breath and the mysterious 3000 was ready to go. Humph, Elder Hiroshi sent out 3 palm strikes in a row, then turned tail and ran. Trying to run now? It's too late. Ling Han struck out with his sword, the mysterious 3000. Xiao, xiao, xiao. 800 rays of sword light shot out simultaneously, covering the sky. This was the sword light emitted by the demon birth sword. What kind of power was it? Elder Mo turned around and raised his palm to block, but the sword light was already surging over, drowning him like a tsunami. When all the sword flashes disappeared, Elder Hiroshi also disappeared from where he was. All that was left were pieces of flesh and bones dancing in the air. Ling Han's figure flashed, and he picked up a ring from the ground. It originally belonged to Elder Mo. He then headed towards Ding Gao Yang and the other man. They were blocked by Hun Yo, and even if they wanted to escape, they couldn't. Nyo, let me. Ling Han leaped with his sword. Ding Gao Yang and the other man were terrified. Ling Han even killed Elder Hiroshi, so what were they in comparison? Friend, let's talk nicely. We're from the Ding family. Ding family, for Wei City's Ding family. Lord Patriarch is a flower blossom tier elite, and my brother is Xian, a figure on the prodigy roll 2 years ago. Now, he's in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and he's in the forest, Ding Gao Yang said, pretending to be calm. This Hun Yo was unreasonable, so Ling Han wouldn't be unreasonable as well, right? Ling Han snorted and said with a smile, didn't they say that background doesn't matter in the dark demon forest? Nonsense, background indeed didn't matter in the dark demon forest, but who was stronger? But the problem was that he couldn't beat them now, so he could only use his background to scare people. Friend, it's just a misunderstanding. Ding Gao Yang saw that Ling Han didn't immediately attack, and thought there was hope, so he hurriedly said. Hee hee, I'll kill you guys, it's just a misunderstanding. Ling Han laughed and slashed with his sword. Pu, Pu, two flashes of sword chi streaked past, and Ding Gao Yang and the other man were easily killed. In front of Ling Han, who wielded a 10th-tier spirit tool, it would be strange if they weren't killed in one move. Ling Han picked up 2 spatial rings, the harvest wasn't bad. Let's go. Ling Han said with a smile. Hunyo immediately agreed crisply and started singing cheerfully. The primordial forest was the place that made her feel most at ease. As they walked, Ling Han rummaged through the 3 spatial rings. Ding Gao Yang and the other man's spatial rings were almost empty. This was normal, they just arrived at the dark demon forest and came to pick herbs, so they obviously couldn't have any harvest now. However, there were many origin crystals in Elder Hiroshi's ring, but most of them were 1 star, and only a dozen or so were 2 stars, not very rich. Aside from origin crystals, there was also a martial arts technique and a map. Ling Han put everything into the Black Tower, then took out the martial arts technique and flipped through it. It was a claw technique, actually Earth grade, but he hadn't seen Elder Hiroshi use it before, so he probably just got it. Earth grade martial arts techniques needed spiritual pedestal tier to cultivate, so Ling Han threw this martial arts technique into the Black Tower and got up to look at the map. With just a glance, he smiled. This was the map of the Dark Demon Forest. It was very detailed, marking every place apart from the core area, such as each stronghold, which force it belonged to, and which area had precious spirit herbs. Besides, the activity areas of some flower blossom tier beasts were also marked, highlighted with a red circle to indicate danger. Not bad, not bad, the value of this map was still quite precious. Ling Han searched, and the place Ding Gao Yang mentioned was marked as Ice Fire Gourd Valley on the map. Half of the area was covered in ice all year round, but the other half had underground lava spurting out, causing crimson fire to soar into the sky. It was indeed a place where cold and heat intertwined. This place could possibly contain crimson red chilling ice grass. Ling Han hurried over, and the distance wasn't far. There was a peak spiritual pedestal tier beast in this valley. It was a large snake that was extremely terrifying and cunning. If it encountered flower blossom tier elites, it would drill into the ice cave to hide, and if it encountered other martial artists, it would attack without mercy. Thus, very few people entered this valley. However, with such harsh conditions in this valley, it was almost impossible for any spirit herbs to grow here, so no flower blossom tier elites specifically went to kill this large snake, and herb gatherers would stay far away. After just 1 day, he arrived at the Gourd Valley. He hadn't entered the valley yet, but he suddenly became vigilant and turned back abruptly, seeing that there was someone more than 30 meters behind him since who knows when. Ao Feng, this guy definitely came to kill him, but it was Han Lin he disguised. Ao Feng's face was full of killing intent, but when Ling Han turned back, he was startled. It wasn't the person he was looking for. Why was the back so similar? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 397. Ling Han also looked at Ao Feng. A few months had passed, and this genius of the Ao clan had already broken through to the flower blossom tier. His temperament was ethereal, and even though he was clearly standing there, it was as if he was an illusion that did not exist. That kind of feeling was so unbearable that one wanted to vomit blood. The best way was to not see him. Flower blossom tier cultivators surpassed mortals, and spiritual ocean tier cultivators couldn't even stare at them, so their might was evident. His expression was calm, but incomparable vigilance rose up in his heart. The flower blossom tier was too strong, so strong that even if he was in the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, he might not be able to block it. This boundary was extremely difficult to cross. As long as Ao Feng moved, he would immediately enter into the Black Tower. Putting aside the question of whether the thunder battle armor in his hands would be able to block Ao Feng, as long as he used it, wouldn't it be the same as telling Ao Feng that he was Han Lin? Who are you? Ao Feng faintly asked. His divine might gushed out like a supreme god. Smelly fart, Ling Han thought. Only a rookie who had just broken through to the flower blossom tier would show off his aura. That was a kind of mentality. His strength had surpassed that of a mortal, but how could his mentality be surpassed in an instant? He did not show any weakness, and took out his golden badge, flashed it, and said, I am Ling Han, an Earth-grade low-level alchemist. His Ao Feng involuntarily drew in a breath of cold air. Such a young Earth-grade alchemist, this was too exaggerated, wasn't it? However, with his eyesight, he could tell at a glance that the badge was real. He was in the flower blossom tier, which was indeed extraordinary, but the problem was that low-level Earth-grade alchemists were on equal footing with flower blossom tier cultivators. In fact, because of the rarity of alchemists, they were even slightly stronger than flower blossom tier cultivators, and even spiritual infant tier elites would be very polite to them. However, could a flower blossom tier cultivator make a spiritual infant tier cultivator be polite? What a joke! Martial art had a strict hierarchy, and if a flower blossom tier cultivator dared to show off in front of a spiritual infant tier elite, he would definitely be smacked to death with a single slap. Unless you had a deity transformation tier or heaven tier father, and if you had a shattering void tier father, then it wasn't impossible for spiritual infant tier warriors to kneel down and lick your boots. So it's Master Ling. Ao Feng put away his high and mighty attitude. He had just broken through to the flower blossom tier, and there might come a time when he would ask Ling Han to concoct alchemical pills for him in the future. Moreover, alchemists were a very united group. Offending one meant offending the whole group. Thus, he did not want to become enemies with Ling Han. Of course, it was mainly because he had the thought of asking Ling Han to refine pills in the future. Otherwise, this was the Dark Demon Forest. So what if he killed Ling Han? Who knew? Ling Han also clasped his hands in greeting, and said, no problem. He was neither cold nor indifferent, perfectly displaying the arrogance unique to alchemists. This was his natural performance, so he was naturally familiar with it. Why would Grandmaster Ling come to the Dark Demon Forest alone, with just 2 people? Ao Feng asked. He'd just noticed Hunyo, and couldn't help but feel slightly surprised. Why had he overlooked her earlier? When one had reached such heights as his, all matters of the world should have been reflected in his mind, but he had neglected Hunyo, which was incredibly strange. Fortunately, it was just a 5 or 6-year-old girl. So what if he ignored her? I need a spirit medicine. If Brother Ao can find it, I'll definitely reward you handsomely, Ling Han said with a smile. Hearing this, Ao Feng instantly felt displeased. He was in the flower blossom tier, but a 17 or 18-year-old youngster with only spiritual ocean tier cultivation actually called him brother. This naturally made him very displeased. But who asked him to be an earth-grade alchemist? Low cultivation and young age weren't a problem at all. I wonder what spirit medicine Grandmaster Ling is looking for? Ao Feng asked. From the very beginning, he had already planned to befriend Ling Han, and now, he naturally could only lower his attitude along the way. Crimson red chilling ice grass. Ling Han said with a straight face, laughing inwardly. If Ao Feng really found a spirit medicine for him, then he'd concoct a restore spirit pill for Ling Dongxing to consume in the future, allowing his father's cultivation to soar all the way and finally suppress Ao Feng. When he told Ao Feng the truth, would this guy be so angry that he'd vomit blood? He really looked forward to it. Alright, I'll remember it. If there's a chance, I'll definitely deliver a spirit medicine for Grandmaster Ling. Ao Feng nodded, then said, I still have other matters to attend to, so I'll take my leave first. Please. Ling Han also nodded. Ao Feng stepped on the wind and left, quickly disappearing into the horizon. Ling Han's gaze turned cold, pondering if he should form a brother with Ao Feng of a different surname or something. At that time, this guy would have to call Ling Dongxing uncle when he saw him. He immediately shook his head and put away this kind of bad taste. Ling Han hates that bad guy. Hu Niu suddenly asked. Ling Han smiled, and said, Niu Niu is so smart, you even figured it out. Hu Niu giggled. She was the most sensitive to auras and emotions. Even if Ling Han deliberately suppressed his hatred and even hid it from Ao Feng, it couldn't escape Hu Niu's eyes. However, we have to be careful from now on, Ling Han said, and walked into the valley with Hu Niu. Ice Fire Gourd Valley, half was a world of ice and snow, and the other half was surging lava, and once inside, it was a vast expanse of white snow that covered the entire valley. It was white without a trace of other colors, which was quite a spectacular sight. There's a big snake here, Ling Han said. Niu wants to eat snake meat. Hu Niu's eyes immediately lit up, almost drooling. Ling Han laughed loudly, and said, that's a peak stage spiritual pedestal tier being, I can't beat it, what about you? Niu can't beat it either. Hu Niu sighed dejectedly, appearing extremely disappointed. This was too big of a blow to the glutton. We're mainly looking for crimson red chilling ice grass, we can deal with this big snake later, Ling Han said. N. Hu Niu nodded obediently. The two walked quickly, passing through the ice valley, and a sea of fire appeared in front of them. There was crimson red lava surging, a scene that made one's scalp tingle. Between the sea of fire and the layer of ice, there was boiling hot water as a buffer. But whether it was the sea of fire or the layer of ice, their power was very strong, and neither was swallowed by the other, existing for who knew how many millennia. As far as Ling Han knew, there was no place like the Dark Demon Forest in his previous life, but it was possible that there was such a place, but he didn't know. After all, the vast lands were too big. Ling Han carefully searched for the place where crimson red chilling ice grass could grow. This kind of spirit medicine would only grow in the buffer zone in the middle, absorbing the power of ice and fire at the same time, or else it wouldn't survive. But this buffer zone was all boiling water, and there were no rocks popping out, which determined that crimson red chilling ice grass couldn't grow because this kind of spirit medicine hated water environments. It was a wasted trip. Ling Han took out the map, which marked many special landforms, but other than this Ice Fire Gourd Valley, there was no other place suitable for crimson red chilling ice grass to grow. Unless it was the core of the Dark Demon Forest. Hong! At this moment, an earth-shattering sound was heard, and a large silver-white snake broke out of the ice. Just the exposed head was several dozen meters tall, and the length of the entire snake body was extremely shocking. Ling Han was surprised, not because of the long tail of this giant snake, but because of the bump on top of its head. Was this the rhythm of transforming into a flood dragon? Chapter 398. Snake transforming into flood dragon transforming into dragon, this was a very normal path of evolution. However, the problem was that flood dragons always had two horns, so what did you mean with a bump on your head, becoming a unicorn? Hu Niu immediately lay on the ground and opened her small mouth, showing her white teeth and roaring. If she had hair, it would definitely be standing on end. Ling Han also revealed a vigilant expression. This large snake was the overlord of the Gourd Cave, a 9th-layer spiritual pedestal tier existence. However, for some reason, it gave Ling Han a feeling that it was even more terrifying than Ao Feng just now. That's right, Hu Niu also felt this way, so she immediately made a defensive and warning stance. When Ao Feng appeared just now, Hu Niu was very calm. The large snake slowly stood up, its head continuously growing as if its body was endlessly long, and when it reached the height of the valley, its entire body still didn't drill out of the ice layer. This was truly inconceivable. At least 1,000 meters long was certain, maybe a few thousand meters long. Ling Han didn't understand. Could a spiritual pedestal tier beast snake grow so big? The bigger the body, the greater the power of the creature. For example, if a creature could grow to the size of the vast lands after adulthood, then he wouldn't need to cultivate at all, just step on it a few times. Even if the vast lands didn't shatter, the people and beasts on it would probably all die, and only a few elites could survive. But precisely because of this, the heavens would strictly limit the size of creatures. For beasts, only when their strength increased could their size follow. For spiritual pedestal tier, the limit size should only be about 100 meters, and only flower blossom tier could reach 1,000 meters, but it couldn't exceed this number. However, this large snake was only at the 9th layer of the spiritual pedestal tier, and its size not only exceeded 100, but even exceeded 1,000, advancing into the level of the spiritual infant tier. Adding on the bump on its head, it was even more strange. There was never heard of a snake beast that could transform into a flood dragon at the spiritual pedestal tier. Transforming into a flood dragon was something that happened after the heaven tier. Strange, too strange. It took a long time to describe, but all of this happened in the span of a single breath. Hung, this large snake descended from the sky, and its entire head smashed down. It was barbaric and violent, using terrifying power to achieve victory. Ling Han's face turned green. He grabbed Hunyou, who still wanted to soar into the skies and fight to her heart's content. His figure flashed, and he had already entered into the Black Tower. With the power and weight of the giant snake, added with the inertia of falling from the sky, such a huge force was enough to instantly smash him and Hunyou into minced meat, guaranteeing a thorough death. This was really unreasonable. He didn't want to compete with you in terms of technique at all. He just wanted to crush you with brute force. But then again, he was able to fully unleash the power of the giant snake. Strange, strange. Why do I sense a familiar scent from this snake? Ling Han rubbed his chin. Spiritual pedestal tier demonic beasts would have special elemental attacks, such as spitting fire, cold mist, and venom. Ling Han had even seen demonic snakes that turned all the scales on their bodies into sharp blades and shot them out. However, this large snake didn't seem to have any plans to use its own special abilities. The moment it came, it fiercely smashed with its head, extremely practiced, and was a habitual offender. Ling Han looked through the Black Tower and saw that the large snake was searching for his and Hunyou's flesh and blood all over the ground. The large snake's eyes revealed a blank expression, as if it didn't understand how the two of them disappeared. Extremely stupid. Ling Han was even more confused. Being able to cultivate to the peak of the spiritual pedestal tier, only one step away from crossing the mortal line, how could its intelligence be so low? Demonic beasts possessed very high intelligence. The higher the level, the smarter they were. Flower blossom tier demonic beasts were definitely no weaker than humans' intellect. But why was this large snake so stupid? It was as if it only knew how to use its head to smash people and only fought with its instincts. Fight, fight. Ling Han made a decision. Xiao, his figure flashed, and he was already out of the Black Tower. Holding the demon birth sword, the thunder battle armor was already activated. Hung, his left hand shot out a flash of lightning, while his right hand brandished the sword. Xiao, 7 flashes of sword chi crisscrossed. Pu, 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 2 attacks landed on the large snake's body at the same time, but what surprised Ling Han was that the 7 flashes of sword chi only left a few white marks on the snake's scales, while the lightning was slightly more effective, piercing through the snake's scales and creating a wound on the large snake's body. However, with the large snake's size, it really didn't hurt or itch. The large snake was infuriated. Hung, the snake's head smashed down again. Ling Han hurriedly entered the Black Tower and dodged this attack. Peng, the entire valley trembled, showing this large snake's terrifying power. Ling Han, however, laughed and said to himself, if it were another 9th layer spiritual pedestal tier, I really wouldn't be able to deal with it, but this snake is too stupid. I can just exhaust it to death. He once again exited the Black Tower and directly punched with both fists, activating the Thunder Battle Armor's power and turning into flashes of lightning that blasted towards the large snake's eyes. The large snake was stupid, but its instincts made it very likely to avoid a vital injury like the eyes, immediately turning its head and dodging. Then, another head smashed down, causing the valley to tremble violently. Countless accumulated snow soared into the sky, and snowflakes filled the sky. On the other side, the sea of flames was also boiling like a tide, splashing out scarlet-red lava. Ling Han continuously entered and exited the Black Tower, diligently attacking the large snake's eyes. As long as he succeeded once, he could reap a great victory, so he was completely in no hurry. The large snake was stupid. If Ling Han's strength was stronger, it would definitely have drilled into the layer of ice under its instincts, and wouldn't fight with Ling Han at all. However, in its eyes, Ling Han was so weak that it would die with a single smash, so how could it escape from such a stinky bug? Moreover, it was continuously hit by Ling Han. Although its skin was thick and its flesh was thick, and it only hurt a little, it completely aroused its ferocity, determined to kill Ling Han. One man and one snake wasted time just like that. After a few hours, the large snake became more and more manic, constantly pounding the ground with its head as if it wanted to take the initiative. Ling Han looked for an opportunity, and in the instant the large snake pounded the ground, he attacked from the Black Tower. Xiao, a sword slashed wildly, and 800 sword lights soared into the sky. It was the mysterious 3000. Pu, Piu, 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 these sword lights all blasted towards the large snake's right eye. At this time, the large snake's terrifying defense was fully displayed. Even if the eye was such a weak vital point, several hundred sword lights still didn't shatter it. Only when the last 100 sword lights surged over did a crack finally appear on the eyeball, and then, like broken porcelain, it shattered with a loud bang. Pa! A liquid rushed out like a burst dam. Under the pain, the large snake twisted madly, and a huge force rampaged, as if the entire valley was going to be flattened. Ling Han entered the Black Tower and immediately recovered his origin power. Now that he slashed out the mysterious 3000 with all his strength, it wouldn't exhaust all his strength, but it still seemed to be 1/3 less. He crushed several dozen origin crystals, recovering his cultivation extremely quickly. Then, he charged out of the Black Tower and charged in through the hole in the large snake's eye. The Demon Birth Sword activated 2 vein-like patterns, and sword chi crisscrossed. Ling Han didn't care about the consequences, slashing to his heart's content. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 399. Formations were ever-changing. Some focused on confusion, and would forcibly trap a person to death. Some were killing formations, and once one entered the formation, one would encounter an endless amount of danger. Meanwhile, some were defensive formations, and were like iron barrels. Great mountain protection formations usually focused on defense, and the one in the Fire Country's Imperial Palace was one such formation. Although it was a level 6 formation, even a spiritual infant tier elite would find it very difficult to forcefully break through. That was because once a gap was opened, it would very quickly close up. Unless one's power was strong enough to create a huge gap, only then would one be able to pass through easily. That would require at least the power of a spiritual infant tier elite. Ling Han's battle prowess was very awesome, but he was still unable to break through the limits of the spiritual infant tier. Thus, he could not possibly force his way through this great formation. However, this was a completely different matter from breaking through the formation. With the Eye of Truth, this formation had practically no secrets in front of him. The simplest way to break through the formation is to destroy a few of the formation's eyes inside. However, the formation's eyes are inside the formation, so this is contradictory unless someone is working together from the inside. However, there is still a slightly more troublesome way to break through the formation, and that is to simultaneously attack a few weak points to create a temporary gap, Ling Han mumbled. Strange images of the sun, moon, and stars surged in his eyes. If I use the annihilating dragon star arrow to attack those 7 points at the same time, I believe I will be able to create a huge gap. He took a deep breath, spread out his hands, and made a drawing posture of a bow. Instantly, 7 spots of light suddenly appeared, turning into 7 arrowheads. Then, the body of the arrowhead that was intertwined with white light also appeared, densely covered with characters. This similarly did not belong to the current cultivation system, and it emitted an ancient and terrifying presence. The Eye of Truth and the annihilating dragon star arrow, the combination of the 2 great mystical powers was practically a perfect match. For no reason, everyone in the imperial palace felt an endless chill, as if they would suffer a terrifying mishap in the next second. Xiao, Ling Han's right hand's 5 fingers loosened, and the 7 light arrows immediately shot towards the formation. The moment they were shot, the 7 light arrows shot in 7 different directions, as fast as flowing light. No one could catch the trajectory of the light arrows. This kind of speed was practically killing whoever was shot, because under normal circumstances, who would keep using origin power to protect themselves? When, the arrows arrived, but did not directly hit the imperial palace. A curtain suddenly appeared in the sky, blocking the arrows, but this curtain of light was like it was made of porcelain. Countless cracks actually appeared on it, and it suddenly shattered. Ling Han revealed a sliver of a smile. Under his Eye of Truth, this great formation immediately became so weak that it could not withstand a single blow, and was directly destroyed by his 7 arrows. Of course, this was also because of the annihilating dragon star arrow's strength. Otherwise, even if he found a weak point, he might not be able to break through it. After all, this weak point was only a relatively weak point, and not something that any attack could blast open. However, the formation's eye was not destroyed. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth rolled in, beginning to reconstruct the formation. Let's go. Ling Han did not have the time to practice his archery here, and immediately brought Hunyo into the imperial city. At this time, even if the formation was reactivated, it would be useless. Ling Han had already entered the formation, and if he wanted to break through the formation, it would be countless times easier. He just had to destroy the formation's eye. What? He actually broke through the formation and came in. Impossible, this formation is something that even a spiritual infant tier elite might not be able to break through. Everyone cried out in shock. This was really unbelievable. Ling Han was only in the flower blossom tier, so how could he possibly instantly break through the imperial city's defensive formation? Could it be that this guy's battle prowess was even more terrifying than a spiritual infant tier elite? What could they do? Even the protective formation was helpless, so who else could stop Ling Han? Young friend, if you have anything to say, just say it to this old man. I believe that no matter how big the matter is, this old man can still make the decision. At this time, an old man appeared. He looked to be in his 70s or 80s, so old that he looked like he could close his eyes at any time, and there was actually a flame burning on top of his head. This was not a real flame, but the flame of martial arts. What did the appearance of the flame of martial arts signify? Forcibly boosting one's vitality, burning one's life force and martial intent as the price, allowing oneself to reach the best state in the later stages of one's life. This was something that couldn't be helped. After a martial artist entered an old age, their blood and chi would weaken, and their battle prowess would no longer be what it was in the past. Only by burning the flame of martial arts would one be able to battle to the extreme. But in this way, regardless of victory or defeat, one's vitality would be greatly damaged, and the lifespan that was already not much left in the first place would drop even further. It was even possible that one would directly die after a battle. Old Emperor. Everyone bowed down one after another, incomparably reverent. This was the emperor of the previous generation of Fire Country, and also the one and only flower blossom tier cultivator of Fire Country. He had forcibly advanced to this level by relying on the power of the nation, and only in Fire Country would he possess the lifespan of a flower blossom tier cultivator. Otherwise, once he left, with the fact that he had lived for close to 300 years, he would definitely immediately decay. In the desolate north, flower blossom tier cultivators were the divine tools that guarded the country and defended against foreign invaders. Ling Han was too strong. With a single move, he had broken through the Great Formation, forcing the old emperor to have no choice but to show himself. This was indeed the most dangerous time for Fire Country. I only have one request, and that is to stop excavating that ancient mine forever, Ling Han said. The old emperor looked hesitant. That ancient mine could give a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator hope of breaking through, a real hope of breaking through. What did this mean? Fire Country would have more than one flower blossom tier cultivator. Then, it would be possible for Fire Country to sweep over the other 8 nations, and unify the desolate north. More territory, more population, and stronger power of the nation. Then, Fire Country would also be able to produce more flower blossom tier cultivators. Even if the ancient mine was completely excavated, the power of the nation would not be emptied, and the foundation of Fire Country would be passed down through the ages. This was too important, so the old emperor was naturally hesitant. All right, this old man agrees to your request. After only an instant, the old emperor nodded in agreement. If he could not even pass this hurdle before him, what future would there be? Ling Han said calmly, I hope you are not doing it half-heartedly, or else. He drew out the demon birth sword, and with a slash, 19 flashes of sword chi shot out. Every flash of sword chi was covered with ancient characters. These were the bone patterns that he had obtained from the old vicious mongoose. They could increase one's attack power, and could practically be considered a mystical power. His sword slashed towards the skies, and a terrifying scene appeared. It was as if the skies were being torn apart, and a black void actually appeared. It was too terrifying. The might of this strike was so strong that it was impossible to fathom it. Everyone trembled. 19 flashes of sword chi, was this guy really human? 10 flashes of chi, and he was already a top-notch king tier, so what kind of concept was 19 flashes? In the flower blossom tier, he was definitely invincible. At this moment, the old emperor completely dispelled his naive idea of pretending to agree to Ling Han's request. He would first stall for time, and in the future, when 8 or 10 flower blossom tier warriors appeared, he would then fight Ling Han. What more 8 or 10, even 80, or 100 would be nothing more than a gift. I dare not. He lowered his stance to an extremely low level. Ling Han nodded, turned around and left. He wanted to properly interrogate Na Ziyan. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.